y'all, and welcome to another episode of Conversations at the Crossroads. Um, the thing that's been going through my mind all day is I bet you're wondering how we got here. You know that meme? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Um, and it's kind of a funny story, right? So, my story of coming into the space of facilitating dialogue is one that is it's kind of a blend between being social media obsessed and just being a big believer in the power of intentional communication, manifestation, all of those things. And also being a member of the academy. Brr, 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 brr. So that's my intersection that I'm talking about today. But really, I'm talking about like how this came to be, right? So, way back, way in the way back years, I can't even remember when I first made my first vision board, but I made a vision board when I was in graduate school in, I think, 2012. Um, So this was the beginning of, I think Instagram was just starting, and that was really like the only social, I mean, Facebook was there obviously, but Facebook was like non-EDU people were just starting to come onto Facebook and but I mean like in terms of like op anybody can join social media, Instagram was just starting to pop off, right? Um And then I was there for '09 Twitter. I sometimes wonder if I had, because I was one of those people that um, blogged. I started blogging in 2008, and I got some really cool opportunities as a result of being just a writer and being somebody who was very interested in pop culture. Um, but I was in graduate school and I like if given the chance to be uh academic famous or like famous, like you ask 23-year-old me, like I cared more about academic famous. I'm just being honest about like what my priorities were. I was really, it wasn't that I didn't care about like being well known in like the public sphere. And actually, when I was maybe like 10 years old, I met Jack Canfield, I believe is his name. He is the author of the Chicken Soup for the Soul books. I met him and he said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "It's not what I want to be. It's what I'm gonna be. I'm gonna be famous." And he said, "Okay, well, I'll see you famous." And so I have this book from him, and it literally says like, "Jessica, see you famous." And so it was just like I just knew I was gonna. I You could not tell me that I was not going to be like in the sphere, but I also knew I wasn't going to be in this sphere dancing, singing, acting. Like I that just wasn't me. And when I was a kid, my mom, she made me do a test reel for KNN Kids News Network. When I tell you I was such a dud, just dead behind the camera, child. Um and it didn't make sense because in life I was a pretty like I could talk to adults. I wasn't like I was reserved. Like I would never say that I was shy. I was reserved, right? Like I very much am a Taurus and I grew up an only child and so I was very comfortable just kind of staying in my own space and in my head. I was in my head a lot. I was a reader. So you can give me a book and a quiet corner and baby, you just leave me there and I am fine. Um and so like being out in front of the camera was not really like I wasn't craving that, but I could you could put me at a dinner party and I can work that room. And so it was like, I remember, like the adults being like, this isn't translating. My mom's friends being like, this is not translating. The kid that we see and the kid who is in front of us are two different people. So that was a colossal fail, which great because what was I going to be? What, a kids news anchor? I don't even think that they did anything with that, but it was just one of those things that they were trying out. My mom worked at CNN, and so yeah, it was one of those things that they were trying out and fail. But I always loved to write, and I've always been well liked. And so, uh, despite all of the reasons why one might think that I should not be well liked, and those can be in later episodes, we can get into those. Uh, me not identifying with, or me not occupying the popular girl stereotype, but still being able to occupy a popular girl's seat at the table. It's a very interesting tale to tell. I might have to ask one of my high school like lifelong besties to like have that conversation with me because I think they can help fill in some context. But anyway, that's another story for another day. I say all that to say these two things have always been kind of like very important to me, but there was the time when I felt like I could have really popped off in the public sphere in a real way that was like authentic to me. So that would have been like as a writer and as a cultural critic or commentator. Um, in in that same vein, I made a deliberate choice just to not and to pursue and kind of put my head down to focus on academia at that time. And no regrets, right? Like everybody has their path. I think that it has taken me a while to understand how everything, like to me, it felt like when I made that choice, my paths diverged, right? It was like, you're not choosing to do this, or you're choosing to do this. When really those two things were not that disparate. They're very coexistent in the way that I've chosen to do my work. One of the first classes that I ever got to create and teach all on my own was a class centered around the question, is Beyonce a feminist? And this was a class on, it was Black activism and feminism through the Women's Studies Department at Cal State San Marcos. Amazing class. And so I've always wanted to intellectualize pop culture. And I guess to really think about it a little deeper than maybe we're allowed to think about it. It's why I use shows like The Housewives and Traders. Sorry, microphone. Sorry, pans. Um, but it's why I use Housewives. It's why I use sports. It's why I use Traders and like shows like that when I teach because I want the learning to be accessible. I don't want everything to be so heady and so dense and so for the academy that the average person can't understand what's happening around them on a systemic level because that's where change is created at the systemic level, right? So that's why when it came to making a vision board when I was in graduate school, follow me. So 2012, I'm making this vision board. And who do I put on my vision board? Oprah and Brene Brown. There was a picture of the two of them together. Sorry, my eyes are watering. There was a picture of Oprah and Brene Brown together probably in Oprah magazine, right? And I remember putting like, gluing the picture onto my poster board and saying, I don't know when I'm gonna meet y'all, but like I'm gonna meet y'all. And when I do, I'm wearing purple because Oprah's gonna notice me in purple, obvious, right? And I did. I, th- y'all, sometimes you plant seeds in the universe and God hears and you don't even water that dream. I didn't water that dream. I was not, I made that vision board and I hadn't even, it was like a work in progress. I hadn't finished it. It wasn't hanging in my room yet. I was still cutting out pictures in magazines. And the next thing I know, I'm in Chicago meeting Oprah and Brene Brown. And 7 years later to the day, 7 years later, seven, the number of completion, years later to the day of meeting Oprah and Brene Brown, I'm turning in the final draft of my manuscript essay to my editor, Brene Brown, for an anthology that will then become a New York Times bestseller. Listen. And how did I get that gig, that opportunity, that writing opportunity? Twitter. And so it comes, I say all of that to say, right? Like I've always been somebody who is a believer of the accessibility and like the community that can be had via social media and via popular culture and engaging with the masses, right? In an intentional way. And also I felt and I know it's only made me all the better, all the better for me, right? Like it's only gotten me closer to fulfilling my own personal legend by learning how to speak multiple languages. And I mean that not in a literal way, like a um, Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese kind of thing. I mean it in a I can speak the language of academia, and I can also speak the language of young Jeezy and Future. And I can also speak the language of Taylor Swift and Sabrina Carpenter. And I can also speak the language of, I don't know, I was gonna say some names and I was gonna out myself on a few things. I can also speak the language of the gays and girls, because she is me and we are they. So I feel like being and learning how to become conversant and kind of leaning in fully to have as much language and as much understanding about those experiences that all reside in me as me. Like I felt like this is just a natural next step, right? To be able to speak it, to be able to like put language to it, and then to be able to look across to someone else and say, okay, so what do you think? And what does it look like for you? How do you occupy those spaces, those intersections? Does your journey mirror mine? There was a scholar in my graduate program, and they talked about the collective only experience. So it's an experience that you have as a collective that's only yours, right? So I'm trying to I'm closing my eyes and trying to like find it. It's been a while. It's been a while, child. Um, but yeah, this experience that like we so many of us share being high achievers and Black. and first daughters and those who have lost a parent and those who identify as queer or in the alphabet family, right? Like there's so many of us who are and these facets of us are interacting within us all the time, but also within our space and within the spaces that we occupy. And I think examining how we've learned to like negotiate our identity in our spaces to bring awareness to it so that we can do it in a more intentional way, right? Like I don't ever want to be in the space of academia and achieve and evolve in the metrics that academia sets at the expense of the metrics that my blackness sets, right? Like those two things. And so because of that, because I never want to disrespect my community, and I always want to make sure that I am honoring my community in a way that feels right for me, right? Um, and when I say my community, I mean the Black community, Black women and femmes. I find myself just being like, okay, I owe it to myself to explore it because the more I explore my facets, the more I reclaim humanity on our behalf. And I think that's really what the core of my work is, even though I say it's about community building. I say I'm an identity researcher. I say, I talk about how, or my work exists, in the discomfort, and I help people overcome the barriers to connection. I work in the ick. I merge leadership work and I merge my counseling and therapy background, and I work in the ick to help people create change and become empowered through the process of change. That's literally what I'm trained to do. 10,000 hours times four, you know? And I feel like it's at this beautiful place where like it's not enough for it to exist just in the context of the classroom. I love my students and I've also come to this reckoning of like you've also got to continue to maintain your ability to be conversant as a lecturer in that space. As much as I would love to just be a YouTube professor, I also know that what makes me, and this is again my journey, what makes me the most authentically me is when I'm being challenged and sharpened by minds who are trained for nuance and who are trained for critique. Critique in a way where we are tearing apart to build better, not just tearing apart. And I think that's where in the public sphere, critique can be really, really hard for someone like me because I know I'm good at critique. I know that I can take critique. If you've been through a dissertation defense, you can take a Twitter troll. You know what I'm saying? But it's different because it hits different and they're attacking different things and the things that matter in different ways to you, right? Or potentially. And so I think about all of those things when it comes to opening myself up to teaching or facilitating dialogue in a public sphere like this. And so again, like I keep marinating on this question. I bet you're wondering how I got here. Man, God, I don't know. That's the only dot 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 but God. Because when I tell y'all, and this is not on no braggy stuff, I so after the essay, the book was published in 2021. After the book, there was like a slight bump in people knowing who I was, and I was able to capitalize on that and get speaking engagements and consulting about my leadership work, right? Overcoming barriers and obstacles to belonging and that kind of thing. And so after a couple of the keynotes and the talks that I would do, people would always ask me, okay, so do you have a podcast? Because I want to know more and I want to hear more about what it is you're talking about. And I thought it was so interesting that people were asking not for a book, which is what I was like, I've got to write a book, I gotta write a book, I gotta write. And I was so stuck on that, which sometimes you gotta let go. Sometimes you gotta lose to win. And I had to lose that thing I was so hung up on. I was like, before you write a book, you have got to figure out what's gonna be in it. And what can you say that only you can say? And so I had to kind of take a step back from that and say, okay, how do I get there? How do I get from here where I have the idea and the will and the desire um to a place of also having the competency and kind of the authority that I have in the classroom in a place where I've trained. How do I do it in another space, in another sphere, and kind of hold that same weight? And really, the only thing you can do is put in 10,000 more hours. You know, I know that my training sets me apart from anybody else. So after those keynotes and those speeches, people would say to me, where's the podcast? Where's the podcast? Where's the podcast? And they weren't asking for a book, and I was so hung up on the book. I wanted to write a book, but they were asking for a podcast because I think the thing that people really are attracted to is the ick. They're attracted to people being honest about the ick. And people being honest about the fact that like life is really freaking hard sometimes. And it's harder or it's exacerbated sometimes by all of these different things that feel like and sometimes systemically are institutionally set up to make your life harder. And I think when people have the opportunity to like find community in that misery or in that affirmation that like I'm not crazy and I'm not alone in my experience, like this is a collective experience, even though mine only looks like mine, collectively we have felt like when I talk about something and I'm describing the experience of grief, I could be talking about a plant, a person, a place, an idea. But if I'm truly communicating what it means to grieve, that's what makes art so beautiful and poetry so beautiful. It's that it has the power to transcend literal meaning and it can become something else, right? For someone else in order to be healing for them. And so, I think all of that, my eyes are just wide. Y'all, when I say allergies have been kicking my butt this year, I mean just that. Um, yeah, so I think For me, this is just the time where I'm ready to sit in the ick. It's the time where I'm understanding that this is my work and this is my way to move through to the next level is to facilitate these dialogues, both for myself, but also because this is what people want. And I think this is how we learn to heal ourselves in community, right? Learning that we're not alone, learning that we're all figuring it out, and learning that sometimes we do have to have accommodation, and it is because of the color of our skin or the fact that we think differently and our brain works differently, or the fact that we have a same-sex partner. Sometimes that is our reality. And it's deeply important to acknowledge my lived experience if you are going to understand and give value to me as a human. And I think so that's how I got here. And that's what I'm hoping keeps bringing people in, right? As I explore all of these different facets of myself and, I started to explore what does it mean to be a cannabis user and in a high achieving space, right? Like where I'm literally becoming a doctor and plant medicine, which has this stereotype of making you lazy, making you low functioning, not able to access and be sharp and access like the best parts of your brain. And here I am becoming part of the 3% of people in the world with a PhD. You know what I'm saying? It just those two things and being able to hold those two things. And the same thing for this of being like, yeah, I make vision boards and I believe in active manifestation. And I have told Scott Evans for over a year now, I love him. I'm like, I want to be on a house guest episode. And so to me, that means in the capacity that I want to be on a house guest episode, then I need to be ready. I need to get ready to be a guest worthy of his caliber of guest. You know what I'm saying? And so to me, it's just like, okay, all of these things are happening. And to me, I would have thought there none of it's all benign, none of it matters. But as I step forward into the creation of it all, which is deeply terrifying and vulnerable and scary, but I'm doing it anyway. And I encourage all of my creators out there who are thinking about doing it, just do it. Um, as you're in that space and you're thinking, oh, I have to remember, like, this is what I'm working. I'm taking steps towards the dream and the life that I've known I would have. And this isn't scary. My body is hardwired for that life because I was never not going to have it. It's just, this was just always going to be next. And so it's just taking time, I think, for me on a cellular level to like really take that in and really understand that like part of the work of active manifestation and part of the work of being a good researcher, right? Like you're asking the questions, but you're also leaving room and space for possibility and for the unknown and for the unexplained, the inexplicable. And right now, I'm leaving room for faith, and I'm leaving a lot of room for what I call God. I'm not too hung up on what you call him, or her, or them, or they. I just know that for me, that connection with the divine is always guiding me. And it may seem that, oh my gosh, I'm only talking about housewives, I'm only talking about traders, or I'm just shooting the on threads all day. But I realize now, I should say, I'm realizing in real time how that intersection is really informing, and that really only makes me a better version of me. And it's teaching me honestly to have grace for myself and to have grace for my journey. My journey's not going to look like everybody else's. My journey's not going to look like this person and that person, and I can't say like, oh, I should have done this a year ago, or I should have done that. I wasn't ready. It wasn't ready. And I'm just deeply grateful for everything that has conspired in the universe to get me here now, in a place where I am ready to have the conversation, where I am ready to facilitate the dialogue. And um yeah, I just can't wait to start talking to other people. And that's coming, y'all. I am in the process now of scheduling, um, for my first guest, for Conversations at the Crossroads. And I want to talk to people who want to think deeply about their human experience. And so I want to put out videos so people can understand where I come from with my thinking and how I kind of operate and how I look at this space and this forum. So you kind of know what you're getting into. But ultimately, this is going to be a space for conversation. This is not a space for me to teach. This is really a space for me to learn. And I think that's also the big difference, because before in my previous dialogues, it was always like myself and panelists who, when we were, subject matter experts in certain fields or on certain identities, and we were there talking with like some level of knowledge authority. This time and this go round, this is coming from a place of I am actively building the ship while we were sailing. And so I think that's another big major difference is I really am not interested in perfection. Sorry, the fire truck just went by. I'm really not interested in perfection. I'm really not interested in uh I don't even I'm not even interested in the celebrity part of celebrity. If I talk to celebrities or people that it's because I feel like they have deeply interesting stories, and in some capacity they must have exhibited vulnerability that I felt like I can reach out to this person and I can actually engage them in a conversation about fill in the blank, and they will be willing to go there with me. Um, and for them to even think about showing up means that they trust me, right? As someone who would um, have grace and love and care for their story, which I feel like is deeply important. And so, I'll probably make a couple more of these videos just so you all understand more about me, more about context, more about what I'm hoping for, and also just explore some more of my own intersections. And I think, manifesting is such an important part of me and knowing who I am. And so, what I am going to do is I have a manifestation tip: scripting. Scripting is my favorite manifestation tip, like of all time. I am going to drop a code so that you can download my scripting prompts off of my website. So if you go to the description box of this video You will see the code, or actually no, you will see the link, excuse me, and enter the code Crossroads, and you can get a free download of the scripting prompt. So it'll teach you, kind of like walk you through how to script. And this is something that I have been doing for years to get what I want and to actively manifest my dreams, to actively manifest my next steps, to actively manifest things that I desire and seek to bring into fruition in my life. So happily share that with y'all for supporting my YouTube series. I thank you so much, and I'll have a good evening.